we go. You have the words of eternal life. Hallelujah, hallelujah.
The Holy Gospel according to St. John, the 8th chapter.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Then Jesus said to the Jews who had believed in him, "If you continue in my word, you are truly my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will make you free." They answered him, "We're descendants of Abraham, and have never been slaves to anyone. What do you mean by saying you'll be made free?" Jesus answered them, "Very truly, I tell you, everyone who commits sin is a slave to sin. The slave does not have a permanent place in the household. The Son has a place there forever. So, if the Son makes you free, you will be free indeed." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
Grace to you and peace of God the Father and Jesus Christ our Lord.
Amen.
You may be seated. Many years ago, I had a friend that his parents sat him down one evening and they explained to him, he was a junior in high school. So, okay, here are your options and how this is how your life is going to play out. You have a choice. You can go to college, we will pay for your college, the dorm, we will help support you, we'll do the best we can to help you get your education. If that's the path you choose, that's what we'll do. However, if you choose not to go to college, you will be on your own when you graduate high school. That means you'll need to find a place to live, you'll need to get a part-time job really soon to help pay for the deposits, for your electricity, and all the things it takes to live. You need to figure all this out. So those are your options, and we'll support whichever decision you make, but that's how it's going to play out. And we're not playing. And so this is years ago when the tough love thing was really becoming super popular. And regardless of what you think about it, this is how it played out for him. His senior year, he did not do really well on his SATs, and he really did not want to go to college anyway. And his parents sat him down again, reminded him, you really, really need to start saving for your apartment and for all the other things you're going to need, because we're not going to support you. You still have choices. College is not all the way out yet. You can study and take your SATs again. You can actually join the military and go that route. There's several options there. Or you can get a better job and you're just going to be on your own, but you're not staying here. There is no option where you stay here. Sounds funny now, but it wasn't back then. Anyway, so his senior year, and actually we're still friends. Well, one of those Facebook things, you kind of keep up with each other. But anyway, he didn't go to college, he didn't join the military, he did get a part-time job. I remember one afternoon during our lunch at school, he was doing the math, and he was trying to figure out. He was getting a little nervous because he had done just enough research to know living on your own was not a cheap thing to do, even if you're living cheap. There's just no such thing. So he was getting a little nervous, but he found a way. He figured it out, and he made it work. I will say this, that it wasn't without just a little bit of bitterness and resentment in the family, and not just his immediate family, but even the extended family. And regardless of what you think about it, in his situation and from his perspective, he felt like he was pretty much just cast out and left on his own, and no one in the family helped him. He had some friends who helped him to get set up and some furniture and different things, and kind of helped him along. But his family, even the extended family, all of them, totally out of it. So I don't know what the parents said to any of them. I mean, I was young myself, but that's how that played out. And to this day, there's still tension in that family, which is what it is. Now, I tell you this because in John's Gospel, that was written pretty much after the destruction of the temple. And by this point in this gospel story, in the Jesus movement story, it was not necessarily a popular thing to join this Jesus movement. The temple was down, bad things had started to happen, and the Pharisaic Judaism was pretty much synagogue worship, and there's nothing wrong with it. The Jesus movement, please remember, this is a part of Judaism. We're all in the same family. And the problem is that in Judaism, think about this for a minute. In Judaism, in the synagogue, there's no graven image of a God at all. I mean, it is the God, he doesn't even have a name. There's not even a he, she. And there's no name for God. And so, and even when it's spelled out, there's no vowel, so there's no name. And so the Romans really didn't have a big beef with an unknown God and an unnamed God and a God they could not see. I mean, they kind of squeaked under the radar that way. And it makes sense when you really put it together. The people in the Jesus movement, on the other hand, were in a whole different kind of situation because Jesus claimed divine origin, if you remember, his beginnings. Even in John's Gospel, the beginning was the Word, and the Word was made God, and the Word was made flesh. Even from the very beginning, he was proclaimed divine beginnings, just like Caesar, just like all the Roman emperors. So here we have, and Jesus, secondly, he had a name, he had divine beginnings, he had a name. Certainly there was an image. I mean, people knew who Jesus was. He was a real person. A person competes in authority. And so the people who were following in the Jesus movement were all of a sudden in a precarious situation because that is, from many Roman perspectives, borderline or if not outright traitorous against the state. Because you're proclaiming someone else to be an authority and to be king over the universe, cosmos, besides Caesar. And they didn't like it because there was to be no competition. That was part of the Peace of Rome, Pax Romana. No competition for any leadership. It was just this. So, when these folks came out, and many know that they were following the Jesus movement, the Jesus way of living, they weren't violent. They were promoting peace. If nothing else, they were promoting really an anti-cultural, because it was really the way Jesus oriented his life. Everybody was welcome. It didn't make any difference of race, background, gender. And you may recall, even by this point, Paul's writings were all already out there. In Christ Jesus, there's no more male or female, slave or free, Jew or Gentile. So they're promoting, and that all went against the cultural flow. That's what got them in trouble. So in most instances, they would be thrown not only out of their families, but in many circumstances, they weren't even allowed to trade in commerce downtown, like for food. Because if they were labeled, nobody wanted to be associated with them because it was dangerous. So these people were pretty much cast out. And you talk about a wall being put up. There was no communication because people were afraid. And that's how that was lived out. Well, move on a few more centuries. 1500s, Luther comes along. And at this point, remember there's two churches, the Eastern Church and the Western Church, but really one big church at this point. And there were some things happening that not just Luther, but several other folks have been pointing out. But all the authority rested in the priesthood. And the authority of the priesthood of the church and the authority of the empire, the emperor of that time, Roman Empire, they had an agreement. I mean, they were both understood themselves to be ordained by God to be an authority over people and in leadership positions over people. And they believed that this was God destined. I mean, and really pretty much everyone kind of understood it that way. Until bad things started happening and people started printing out the scripture, and some lost their life over this in gruesome, horrible sorts of ways. And then Luther comes along and he challenges the Pope himself. And the interesting thing about that is that he had the German princes from where he came from, he had their support. So they kind of kept him hidden and out of harm's way. Otherwise, he would have been executed as well as all the others. But the problem was, well, on January 3rd, 1521, roughly, I'm pretty sure that's right, he was excommunicated from the church. Now, that doesn't sound like a big deal to us, whatever. In those days, that was a big deal. When Luther went into the priesthood, he pretty much, his dad wasn't a huge fan because Luther was supposed to be a lawyer, and there's a big story to that. So his family was the other priesthood. It was the church. Everything he knew and loved, I mean, these were his people. And so when he was cast out, I think that sometimes we don't understand what a big deal that really was. I mean, there was a lot of stuff going on, but there was a lot of personal turmoil as well. That was scary stuff, and so he was out. He had supporters, and yes, he did develop a new family. but it wasn't easy. Today, in this day and age, move up another few hundred years, 500 years, probably 501. Now, we don't often think that people get thrown out of churches. We don't often think that people get excommunicated from whatever denomination or whatever church or whatever organization they're in. But I promise you, it still happens, even today. Even today. And I can't begin to tell you how many people I've visited with, both in hospitals that had no church because they were thrown out for various and sundry reasons, either because they stood up for the wrong justice issues, because they loved the wrong person, because they were divorced, because they had a child out of wedlock. I mean, you go down the purity holy list, I mean, whatever you think that might be, and the list there's no end to the list of reasons for people to be thrown out of organizations, including churches, until Jesus came along. And Jesus stood against all that. And that's part of what they didn't like. That's part of what this freedom thing he was thinking about was all about. Luther wrote on the freedom of a Christian, he says, Christians are free to bow down to no human being. Christians are totally free to bow down to no one except God and God alone. And if we ended there, we could all go home and say, well, wasn't that special? But he didn't stop there. He kept writing. He said, Christians are also bound to be the servant of all humanity, the servants of all people. So on the one hand, we're free to not bow to anyone but God, but on the other hand, we are bound to be servants of all. That means all the rejected. That means all the ones everybody else doesn't like. That means all the ones of the people who are different. All the reasons everybody else cast out. Jesus says, come to me. And Luther taught the very same thing. He said, you know what? Well, that's not entirely true. He did have some issues that were worked out several hundred years later. Forget I said that. Don't take that out of tape. So, I'm playing. So, after all these years, the church is resolved, I should say it that way, starting with Luther's thesis. There's something to that. There's a lot of people out there that have been rejected from families, from churches, from synagogues, from workplaces, you name it. People have been, put out on their own. And Jesus says the people of God are free to welcome them back in. Because, Marilyn read it just a few moments ago, Christ, who hasn't fallen short? Who here really does believe in their heart of hearts that they are perfect in every way, just like Mary Poppins? I know I'm close. But no one is there. No one. Not a living soul. Therein lies, it's almost an ethical quandary. So, and therein, I think, lies the reform of today, the modern reform. And we like to teach and preach, we being all Reformed church traditions, that the church is always in reform. It's always good to stop and look at what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how well we're doing it, and what we can do better. And one of those measures is how well are we loving other people? How well are we accepting other people? How well are we teaching and preaching? Even Jesus from the cross, everyone says, well, Jesus had Mount Well. Even from the cross, the guy who was deriding him on his side goes, well, if you were really the Son of God, And Jesus said, today, you'll be with me in paradise. There was still forgiveness. Even while they were spitting on him, there was forgiveness. Even while they were killing him, forgive them, for they know not what they do. There was forgiveness. So we serve a God who chose, who chose forgiveness over hate. We serve a God who chooses resurrection over death. We choose a God who chooses reconciliation over separation. And if we're going to follow this God, those are the kinds of things we need to figure out how we're going to live out ourselves. Individually, as a church congregation, as a larger church, as the church universal. How are we going to live this out, and how well are we doing? Where do we need to reform? Are there ways that we can do better? I would argue yes. If you've you've ever watched the news, and most especially this week, that is a resounding. We need to rethink our attitudes about each other. I mean, all of us, not just them, whoever them is. And I said that wrong on purpose. Don't email me. Whoever them are. It's all of us. We need to rethink our attitudes. Who do we turn our nose up at? Who are we saying, you don't quite measure up to our standards, sorry. You don't belong. You're not one of us. Is that really his way of being in the world? Is that what we're following? I mean, those are questions I can't answer except together. And those are the things we need to talk about together. And how is it in the world that we live in now, and I just really want to just barely touch on this because it's a longer conversation that we need to have, but how is it that there's anti-Semitism in the 21st century? I don't understand it. I mean, I really don't understand it. I've never understood it, but I most especially don't understand it now. You know, innocent people at a naming ceremony, how does that happen? I don't know how it happens. I know it didn't just happen. I know that it was years of hate building, and he's not the only one. It's out there. We see hate all the time. And it seems to me that part of our call is as the people following this man on the cross, if we're going to follow him, it seems to me that part of our rebuttal to that attitude, when we hear hate, we need to speak love. When we hear, bitterness and separation, we need to speak inclusion and love and forgiveness of everyone. Even the people we don't like. Maybe most especially people we really don't like. Maybe people most especially who are in parties we don't like. Maybe we need to have a come together, come to Jesus meeting. So you know what? I love you in spite of the fact that you're wrong. And mean it. I'm really serious. I know that sounded really funny because I read it twice. And I thought, well, no, but yes. I know in our heart of hearts most of us believe that. So let's come clean with it. Say, I love you even though I know you're wrong. It's okay to say it out loud so we can at least have a conversation. I love you too even though I know you're wrong. You know what? And choose love. Choose his way of being in the world, because until then, our only hope in this nation, in this world that we live in now, to me, is the gospel word of love, hope, and reconciliation. That's it. That is our only hope. And until we learn to live it out loud, and by out loud I mean very verbal, not just in our actions in our lives, but out loud, say the words. Especially when someone angers us and somewhere on our journey and they say, and they're spatting off hate, say, you know what? I love you anyway, in spite of what you just said. And it might have to be one of those things, I love you with the love of the Lord. But if you have to say it out loud, you have to say it out loud. We need to learn a new language of blessing, a new language of love, a new blessing of hope, a new blessing of unity, a new blessing of inclusion of all people. Of all people. And all those who've been hurt by violence and rejection and whatever the hurt is, it seems to me that as the people of God, we're called to keep them not only in our prayers, but in our conversations. We need to not let this die. We need to keep it alive and keep the conversation going. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. May the peace which passes all human understanding keep all of our hearts and all our minds in Christ Jesus our Lord. Amen.
Amen.